Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another Schmeat video. So today's video is something that I didn't expect to make a video on because the Hornets, coming out of All-Star break, there isn't much news. It's more on, the war in Ukraine. That's probably where most of the people's minds are at. But interesting news has come out of Charlotte and out of Mitch Kupchak, which usually he doesn't do podcasts and essentially not well-known podcast. Mitch Kupchak, for any of you that don't know, he's a huge name. Former GM before Rob Pelinka of the Los Angeles Lakers. He has a pretty good draft record. Drafted Brandon Ingram for the Lakers. I don't know if he stayed around to draft Lamelo Ball or Lonzo Ball. But for the Hornets, he's having an incredible draft record. Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, a lot of good players. And he obviously made that Gordon Hayward trade, which looking back, it wasn't really a trade, but it was more of a sign. And then the Celtics got a $30 million trade exception, which they didn't really use. So I guess we got him for nothing. Which is pretty good. It was just more basic signing, but interesting news out of Mitch Kupchak that I didn't think I'd hear. He went on this podcast called Hornets Hivecast. It's probably a podcast I would think that's partnered with the actual Charlotte Hornets, like it's an official podcast for the Charlotte Hornets. And he said some interesting things. I'll put it up on screen. One of the quotes that I have here that was like clipped out a lot was, we're not really going to advance without Gordon Hayward, said Mitch Kupchak. And another point of this podcast, he said that Gordon Hayward is our best player. Now, this is interesting on two fronts. You don't hear many GMs, unless they have either LeBron James on their team or Ja Morant. You don't hear many GMs when you have a young franchise player. They don't usually say that their best player isn't that franchise guy. If Mitch Kupchak said LaMelo was our best guy, this wouldn't make headlines, this wouldn't make news, this wouldn't make Hornets fans kind of scratch their heads. But him saying that Gordon Hayward, a guy that's been very inconsistent, I look up his stats on our team. He is 5th in points per game, 5th and 6th on major categories, major statistics. Obviously, he matters a lot. If you look at his win-loss percentage that we have when he plays and when he doesn't play. But it's very interesting that a GM would call, especially not like a clear-cut guy, he would call that player like the best player on the team. And I don't hear a lot of GMs use that language. Especially with a lot of egos on the team. I think of Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, LaMelo Ball. It's just very interesting. And another thing is that he made a couple jabs, I would say, at LaMelo. This is very weird stuff, and stuff I didn't expect out of Mitch Kupchak. A true professional, I might add. He's been around the NBA a long time. He knows how players are. He knows how the NBA works. So I'm not really sure where he's going with this, but he said that LaMelo Ball can't take it all. I obviously, this is way out of context. I didn't, listen to the podcast. I listened to the clips that were taken out of it. So yes, this is out of context, but I think even in context, this would be a very weird thing to say. He said LaMelo Ball, he doesn't want LaMelo Ball to get, basically head over heels. He doesn't want the hype to get to him after his All-Star appearance, after All-Star weekend, where he was featured a lot in that All-Star game and in the Rising Stars game. He said he doesn't want that to go to his head. Now, this is interesting because we drafted him 2nd overall. We are actively building a team salary-wise up until that 2024 season when we have to give him that rookie extension. We are building a team around him. He is our franchise guy. He is the one selling jerseys. He's the one selling tickets. Why would you do anything to maybe deter LaMelo Ball? That's where I'm coming from. And also, it's fucking LaMelo Ball. He's been in the limelight since his 7th grade year. I don't think the hype is getting. I think he's had this hype for 7 years now. Even when he was in Lithuania, and people, who's watching him in Lithuania? A lot of people were. Overtime was posting him. He has been in this limelight for way too long. And yes, it's the NBA, it's the All-Star game, it's a bigger stage, but he's had the social media presence for so long, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why Mitch Kupchak would go out of his way, go on this podcast, which I don't think has a lot of listeners, but they might be coupled with the Hornets, so Mitch Kupchak has to. It's maybe in his deal or contract that he has to do so many social media things, and this was one of them. But why make outlandish claims? Like, just do a basic interview on what the team's doing good, what they need to improve on, and leave it at that. Why take subtle jabs at your franchise guy and then call a guy that's probably, the 3rd or 4th best player on our team the best player? Tell me how that makes sense. I don't understand his reasoning behind that. But that's the video. I thought I'd go on a little rant on why our GM seemingly has to make these comments. And you don't see this every day. You don't see many GMs go on a podcast and kind of rant about their team and call a player who's arguably not even like the 3rd best player on our team the best player, and how we can't advance in the playoffs without our 3rd best player. And yes, I'm guessing he talked about last season when we were in the play-in and Gordon Hayward did not play in that play-in game, so maybe he's going off of that. And yes, our win-loss without Gordon Hayward on the court is very bad, but still, come on, Cuphead. You have been in the NBA for long enough to know that, you shouldn't be saying these things. But that's the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later.